Game 1 against the Braves.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Jake Ignaszewski, and here, as always, with my co-host, NESN, Lauren Willand. And after a great stretch of Red Sox baseball where the offense was doing amazing, started pitching, was shoving, the Red Sox lose 2 games in a row and fall to the Atlanta Braves, who are, in my opinion, outside of the Rays, the best team in the majors at the moment. And so when you really look at what we saw in last night's game, it's not too surprising, especially with Nick Pivetta on the mound, who has struggled throughout this season. But it's definitely tough to swallow when you look at the score, 9-3.
Yeah, I mean, you said it was bound to happen. The offense was bound to cool down. Yoshida's hit streak was bound to come to an end, and things were bound to start looking a little messy. So, I mean, I don't think there's any reason to truly panic by any means. I think that it's 2 games that the Red Sox have lost. They're coming off an 8-game win streak not that long ago. So, I mean, yeah, you look at the final score, yuck, but on to the next one.
And, it didn't start out pretty either. The Braves ended up scoring 4 runs in the first inning, and Pavetta's first 4 batters, single, home run, walk, and hit batsman. And the one thing that really came up in my mind when I just saw this all unraveling, especially early on, and it was sort of a question that was asked at the end of the game as well, is, could this point to Nick Pivetta, essentially losing or not performing up to the standards of an audition to stay in the rotation after Paxton gets activated and comes back with the Red Sox. And Pivetta actually answered this after the game, and he's like, I'm going to start for this team like I have since I came here. And he even said to the reporters, like, I don't understand your question. And it was really interesting to just sort of hear his whole thoughts on it. And you could see that there's still a little bit of pushback from him to want to have an open mind to move to the bullpen, but no guy really wants anybody talking about their job like that. And we'll speak more about the stats in a tiny bit, but I thought it was interesting how there was some people who are saying that it was insensitive for them to ask him this, and he's a human being. And if you've listened to this podcast long enough, the human aspect of the game is something that I love to talk about. I think it's fascinating. I think it's something that needs to be promoted a lot more. But at the same time, when you're not performing to the standards of what a starting pitcher or a successful starting pitcher performs to, especially for a team who just came off of an 8-game winning streak, you're going to get those questions asked to you, and you got to be ready to answer them when it comes.
I have no issue with the question that was asked, and I have no issue with how Pivetta answered, because he's a starter and that's his job, and he's not thinking about losing that job, even though he'd still have a job with the Red Sox if he does get moved to the bullpen. But yeah, I think he answered it in terms of, I'm preparing for my next start, and just trying not to really give into the thought that he could be moved to the bullpen. I have people have to ask these questions, people have to answer these questions. So like I said, no issue with that whatsoever. And it also comes down to being accountable. It wasn't a good start. It wasn't a good start right off the bat. I mean, you said it right when you were reading the first 4 batters. And, Pivetta's not expected to be an ace or even a 2 starter. He's a 4 or 5 starter. You want more than what you've seen from him this season, and especially from what you saw on Tuesday. And it's also a very fair question, because Paxton's coming back. You have Whitlock coming back. And once the projected starters are healthy, that's 7 of them. And we're going to see a 6-man rotation at least one time through next week, or starting, today, I guess. But someone's got to be the odd man out when the seven are healthy. And right now, I do think that's Pivetta, but I also have zero issue with him getting another start next week.
And, I think the biggest explanation for anybody who was ever defending Pivetta staying in the rotation, and even before the season even started, this was a conversation. And the innings eater was in the reliable part of his game of him being able to go deep in games was something that was always pointed out. And I feel like that argument's pretty much irrelevant up to this point. He's only gotten past 5 innings one singular time. I thought he was supposed to be this innings eater, but Kluber, Bello, even Whitlock when has pitched longer than Pivetta has. And when he only gives you 4 innings and you got to deplete the bullpen early on in a first game of a series, that's not helping you out whatsoever. And so not only is he not performing even to what we've seen in the last few years, he usually allows 3 to 5 runs every single start. Now we're seeing, a tick up to 6 or 7 runs at a point. And him not being able to go deep in games is starting to hurt the bullpen, but that was essentially his strength. And I thought it was interesting because in his last, Ian Brown put this out, in his last 24 starts dating back to July of 2022, Pivetta has a 6.09 ERA. And in 7 starts so far this season, a 6.23 ERA. And for those people who love the sabermetrics and the little nitty gritty, statistics outside of just ERA, he's first percentile for barrel percentage. And the one thing that I looked at looking at Fangraphs is when you look at from last year to this year, in terms of ground ball percentage, 38.5 last year. This year, 34%. And then when you look at home run slash fly ball ratio, last season was 12.4%, and then this season is 18.2%. And so if you can read between the lines, isn't allowing ground balls and is allowing way more fly balls and home runs that turn into not only hits but also runs as well.
That's because MLB's juicing the balls again. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, you see the regression, and something can be said about, getting the ball every 5 days, being reliable, being there every single start. But when you look at what he's given the Red Sox this season, just this season alone, it's almost not enough to keep him in the rotation. Now, I'm fine with keeping him in the rotation. I said that just a few minutes ago, but he's on thin ice. And I think that Tuesday, in his next start, I think that's going to show a lot of hopefully promise or potential of what comes next. But for people saying like, oh, it's, Paxton's coming back, you don't know what he's going to give you. You guys were ripping on him, like not you, Jake, but like, Twitter just like ripping all over him for his outing, for his control. And we talked about how he looked in his rehab starts. But if history repeats itself, and oftentimes it does, Pivetta's about to get hot. Last year, he went on that 8-1 stretch. He had a 1.85 ERA from, I think, 10 starts in May to June. I'm hoping that's what we're about to see from Pivetta. I'm definitely not putting all my eggs in one basket over that. But this could be a turning point for him, and this could be a turning point for his role with the Red Sox. Because if we see another start next week like we did on Tuesday, I think he's the odd man out to go to the pen. I think he makes the most sense out of those starters. And again, Paxton, there's so many question marks around him, and we don't know what we're going to get from him. But you're not going to judge everything from one start. We've had enough, a month plus of Nick Pivetta starts, and they haven't lived up to what I was hoping, what Red Sox fans were hoping to see from him, especially in this season. And yes, he was, very reliable and sturdy for the Red Sox last year, and he's still reliable for the Red Sox in terms of he's always going to be there for his start. But at what point does he become a liability in this rotation? Right. But then again, you look, do you want him to give up 4 runs in the first inning, or do you want to have him give up 4 runs in the 7th inning when he comes in for relief? So it's a double-edged sword, but I do think that he's on thin ice, 100%. I think that his time in the starting rotation could be coming to an end, and I think his next start has a lot riding on it, no matter how Paxton performs, no matter how Bello performs, Whitlock, how Kluber, Sale, everyone. I don't think anyone's job is safe, but I think Pivetta's is probably the most in the red zone.
I agree. And, I'm curious to see if that is the specific move that they make to move him to the bullpen. Do we see the 2021 playoffs bullpen version, or what version do we really see? Because you can even look at his first inning, which we've talked about multiple times so far, is he just pitched 1 inning, he allowed 4 earned runs. So is that what he's going to give you out of the pen, or is he going to be a completely different pitcher like we've seen from a Josh Winkowski or other guys who move from a starter to a reliever? And for people who are thinking in their mind, you brought it up, Pivetta's already making another start. Cora announced that after the game that he's going to make another turn. And so, looking into the future, today when you're listening to this, it's going to be Bello, and then the 12th is going to be Paxton. The 13th is going to be Sale. 14th, Kluber. 15th, Houck. 16th is Pivetta, and then it's going to flip over again to Bello on the 17th. But I think that, we've talked about this even going into spring training. What is this rotation going to look like, a few months in? And, we'll speak more about that and, give more of our thoughts outside of just specifically Nick Pivetta in our second segment. But before we do that, I just want to talk to you about Sorare. Sorare is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and a marketplace for transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 MLB teams. It's unlike any other fantasy baseball platform. Sorare managers truly own their fantasy experience, collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or loss, you still have your cards, and there's no cost to play. Plus, the more that you win, the more you advance, collecting increasingly powerful cards and assessing next level competitions and rewards. Another really cool part about it as well is MLB All-Stars Juan Soto and Julio Rodriguez are going to be serving as brand ambassadors and will be a part of MLB events throughout the season. So head over to sorare.com/logkedon. That's spelled SORARE.com to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's sorare.com/logkedon to start playing today. And so this is one thing that has sort of frustrated me a little bit about the shuffling back and forth of the rotation and just not making a decision and just sticking to it. I understand, it's the waiting around for Paxton to be ready. Obviously nobody expected the Bello injury to happen, the Whitlock delay to start the season, and then now the injury once again. But I'm just at a point where I just want to know what this rotation is going to look like for the rest of the season. I feel like it's sort of been bouncing around the answer for months and months now. And, it even makes it even worse when we've been talking about James Paxton since December 1st of 2021. He's going to make his debut with the team a year, 5 months, and 11 days after he got signed. And I feel like even last year when we were talking about the rotation and just pitching, James Paxton's name still came up because we just forgot about him. And now that he's finally in the conversation, this is becoming a lot more of a debate of who's in and who's out. But I'm just excited to finally get the definitive decision of this is our rotation for the foreseeable future. Obviously, injuries and stuff will come up, but I just want to know who's the 5. Stop with the 6-man rotation crap.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the 6-man rotation for no reason other than I can't give you a solid reason as to why I don't like it. I just don't. But I think that with Paxton's return, with Whitlock's return, that we're getting closer to seeing what this definitive starting rotation will be. It's been a lot of, mixing and jumbling and trying to, make Whitlock a starter, make Houck a starter, and just truly seeing what they can bring as starters. It's a lot of trial and error with these guys. And now that it's getting healthier, the rotation and everything is seemingly falling into place in terms of health, I think we're going to get a clearer picture. Now, when I say when, I'm saying it's inevitable that Nick Pivetta will go to the bullpen. What kind of, who's the odd man out there? Because I don't think you get rid of Nick Pivetta altogether. I do think that there's still some reliability there. I think he's better than what he's shown this year. I'm not saying he's an ace by any means, but I think he's better than what he's shown. So I think now with this 6-man rotation coming up in the next few days, in the next slate of games, we'll see that 6-man rotation. I think we're going to start to see kind of who is going to go where, what role will each player play. And we've talked about this for probably since you've joined the show, is having defined roles for these guys. And someone like, James Paxton, he's been a starter. He hasn't pitched since 2021. He pitched 1 game in 2021, and who knows how he's going to react to playing in a big league game and how he's going to fare with just getting stretched out into that role again. He's no spring chicken. He's quote unquote old for an athlete. So it's it's going to be very interesting going forward, especially the next few games, seeing that rotation kind of get healthier and get fuller and see who truly is the odd man out, because we've said it, that we want the decision to be hard for Cora. We want this to be difficult. But right now, in my eyes anyway, it seems like it's an easy decision for Cora, but baseball is weird. Anything can happen. Pivetta could come out next week and strike out 10 batters. Bello could come out and give you 7 innings of shutout ball, and Paxton could bounce back. He'd give you 5 strong innings. I would take that. So you just never know what's going to happen. And I think this coming week, the next 6-7 games are going to tell a lot about what this rotation will look like going forward.
And one thing that I do want to say for people who are excited for Paxton to come back, but are also semi ready to be critical on him, if he doesn't perform up to the standards in their mind in his debut with the Red Sox. The one thing that I want to say is, as you mentioned, I even said it too. It's been almost a year and 6 months since he's signed with the Red Sox. That makes it almost 2 years since he's pitched on a major league mound. And was it pretty in his starts in Worcester? No, it wasn't. He had one good start where he really made you excited about what he could bring to the Red Sox rotation. And, the one thing that I think is going to happen, not only with Paxton, but with almost every single pitcher in this rotation outside of, I think, Kluber, because I feel like it'd be very surprising if they move him to the bullpen. But I think there's going to be a lot of overanalyzation from, not only fans, but, people that speak about the team on, really using these next 6 days as the audition and really trying to look closely on why or why not one guy should be able to be in the rotation, one guy shouldn't. And, at least for Paxton, I think a lot of people agree with this. It would be unfair to assess him after his first start in the majors in almost 2 years. And I feel like for him, I wouldn't expect it to be pretty. I would love for it to be pretty. I would love to see him go 5 innings, strike out, 8, only allow, 2 to 3 hits, and, maybe I'll allow 1 to 2 runs. But if it didn't look pretty in Triple-A, I don't expect it to look, pretty in the majors against major league competition. And so, I could see there being a little bit of some time to where he still needs to work back to going against major league competition and being dominant in that aspect, because especially with the control, that's one thing that we spoke about after his last rehab start. That was a big thing that could really hinder him, especially against major league competition. And I know you love this phrase, but if you get tons of ducks on the pond, there's going to be tons of runs coming in. And he was getting hit up a lot in Triple-A. And so we'll see if I think the big thing is we'll see if he's better than Pivetta.
Yeah, but we're not going to know that after one start. This is, we'll need a few starts from him, and he'll need a few starts for himself. Is get that arm ready, kind of shake any rust off from the last year and a half that he's been sidelined with several different kinds of injuries. So I'm excited for his return. I'm excited to see what he can bring to this team. I hope it's better than what he brought to Worcester, and he can be consistent. So I think that I think there's a lot of pressure on him, whether that's from himself, whether that's from the fans and just, the Red Sox as a whole. I don't think the Red Sox are putting any pressure on him, so to say, but he's going to come out there and want to give the best performance he can. I hope he doesn't get shelled. I hope he does well. Like you said, 5 innings, and I said 5 innings. That's I'd be okay with that if he gets you 5 innings in his first start since 2021.
And the one thing that I don't think I mentioned when we spoke about his last rehab start, but I think he had 35 to 40 pitches in the second inning.
Yeah.
And I just saw that. I'm like, James, you can't be doing that when you're back up in Boston. You just can't. And so I he knows that, and that I'm just excited to fully see him, finish a game in a Red Sox uniform. That's one thing that I've been waiting for outside of just when he's pitched for Worcester. But another narrative that I think has been interesting to see, especially after Pivetta's rough start yesterday and all the assumptions that he could probably be the odd man out. There's a lot of people also pointing to Brayan Bello, and obviously he makes his start today when we're posting this, and it's a big game for him to make a statement, not only today, but also when he makes his next start on the 17th after this one. But I really doesn't make a lot of sense to me, the people who say, maybe we can send him back down again, continue to help him develop. How are you going to help him develop and get used to major league pitching when he's going against Triple-A AAA batters. That doesn't make any sense to me. But, you know, when people bring that up, the only thing that comes to my mind is, well, with, you know, Pivetta, you know what you have. Kluber, you kind of know what you have, but you paid him $10 million and you can't really put him in the bullpen. So, you know, there's a few guys you could, but, you know, there's a few guys where you know what you already have. Bello, you don't know what you have. You know the potential that could be, you know what he could become, but you got to give him chances to become that. And you got to allow him to get roughed up here or there and, you know, be able to learn from those things. And the one thing that, you know, I look to is when you look at Bello's stats and Pivetta's stats, they're two completely different pitchers. And even though, you know, in a lot of people's standards, Bello has struggled. He's a rookie. He's still semi in his rookie year. You know, he's a young pitcher. And, you know, the one thing to me is if you want to win ball games and you want to continue to develop guys to be a legit contender next year, stop bouncing around the question of, you know, should we keep a guy in here who we already know who he is and, you know, we might win or lose with him, or do we want to keep developing with a guy like Brayan Bello who has tons of potential and could give us a better chance to win? Because at the end of the day, it's about winning, right?
It is. And I think too, like you said it, like he's not going to like, I think he's ready for MLB action. I just think that this is his first MLB season and there's going to be struggles. There's going to be, you know, humps to get over along the way. And I don't send him to Triple-A unless he's injured and he has to rehab from an injury, or if there's something just like that he is just struggling so bad with that maybe he needs to get it fixed in Triple-A. But I don't see any reason to send him to Worcester right now. It's, you know, you just have to, you know, he's 23. He's going to develop just fine. He needs to see the major league pitching, and it's just this is part of the development process. Everyone wanted him on the Red Sox so bad last year, and you got him, and I like, send him to Worcester. And I mean that's a knee-jerk reaction. I feel like that's, you know, we've seen that even with Tristan Casas. We've seen that with several other prospects along the way, not just in the last two or 3 years. But yeah, you just got to give this guy a chance to get, you know, in his first full MLB season. And you don't need to be bouncing him around up and down to Triple-A because there's just no reason for it. Unless, like I said, unless there's an injury or that he just completely is like goes off the rails. Okay, fine. But right now, just no need.
And the only reason why it annoys me so much is because like this is the first guy since Clay Buchholz that you could be excited that's a homegrown Red Sox talent. And we're trying to like mess with him and put him up and down in Triple-A and overanalyze and expect big things from him, you know, after, you know, less than 10 starts last year. And, you know, I think people always look at, you know, he had like the 8 ERA in his first 6 starts getting roughed up and then he shoved down the stretch. And I feel like a lot of people at the end of last year was like, all right, that's the guy that we're going to see immediately in 2023, but then forget how young he is, how the lack of experience that he has. And I also feel like as well, Red Sox fans are used to the Sox going out and signing already defined pitchers who have already cemented themselves as quality MLB talent and aren't really used to some of you know, the rough starts here or there or the growing pains that some young pitchers go through. And, you know, that's why I feel like not only you brought up happens with Bello, Duran, Casas, that's all part of it. That's how young players develop. And, you know, I kind of want to wean off of the rotation talk real quick because I thought it was kind of cool. You know, Ken Rosenthal wrote about this recently, how Pedroia actually compared Jarren Duran to the 2011 Jacoby Ellsbury. And as somebody who grew up loving Jacoby Ellsbury before he was a traitor and went over to the Yankees, and I also love Dustin Pedroia as well. But it was so cool for me to, you know, sort of think that, especially from what we saw from Duran last night and what we've seen so far since he's come back up, not only what he's been able to show at the plate defensively as well, but the stolen bases aspect. That's one thing that I think a lot of people fell in love with Jacoby Ellsbury with, was his ability to just have blistering speed on the base pass and, you know, really make defenses and pitchers really uncomfortable whenever he wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, and I could be included in that, were ready to kind of walk away from Duran and just be like, listen, this kid has a lot of adjusting to do and growing up to do. And, you know, there was a great article in The Athletic Wednesday morning about Ken Rosenthal wrote that, you know, Dustin Pedroia helped him. And it was just helping him change the mechanics of his swing. And I think we've seen it, pay dividends this year. He's really taking advantage of the opportunity since his recall from Worcester. You've mentioned the stealing bases, just very aggressive on the base path and utilizing that speed. So now we look at him and we don't have to say, well, all he has is speed, because he's contributing to the Red Sox in ways that he wasn't last year. He seems to be in a much better mindset overall. We talked about him, goofing off and having the glove on his head the other day. So it's smaller things like that, but then it's also, he can do that, have fun, and then produce at the plate, be strong in the outfield. And he's just done a complete 180 since last season. And he's done even since his recall. And it's, it's really, really good. And it's great to see, it's fun to see those kinds of comparisons to, the Ellsbury, because he was a good part to this team. He was a huge factor to this team while he was with the Red Sox. And I do hope the best for Duran. I hope that he can be that. I hope he can be better than that. And I think he's on a really, really good path right now. And I really hope that continues.
And, I wouldn't be surprised if when somebody eventually tells, Duran about this comparison, or if he already knows about it, he kind of goes the Alex Verdugo route of, I'm not Jacoby Ellsbury, I'm Jarren Duran. I want to make my own name. And I think that's, the biggest thing is taking that comparison with a grain of salt and not expecting him, why isn't he exactly like Ellsbury? You know what I mean? But I think the stolen base aspect, this is something else that I wanted to bring up is, we've seen throughout the Red Sox farm system, it's becoming a lot more prevalent for the Sox to have these speedsters on their team. Obviously, the David Hamiltons, who broke the franchise record last year, he already has 20 steals so far this season. Greg Allen has 17. And then, when you look at Double-A, Corey Rozier, the guy that the Sox got from the Eric Hosmer deal, 15, which is the leader in the Eastern League. And then the Southern Atlantic League, there's Max Ferguson, who also came from the Padres in the Hosmer deal, has 15 as well. And so I think it's really cool to see a speed aspect that we haven't seen in a long time, not only in a Red Sox farm system, but with the future Red Sox guys. And I'm just excited when there's a time where potentially, Jarren Duran and David Hamilton are both on this Red Sox team, giving pitchers and catchers headaches and just making chaos on the base paths.
That's the hope, right? I mean, that's what we want from them, from both of them, especially. I mean, someone like Hamilton, who's not ready for MLB, but could be very soon. And I want to see that too. It could be a dynamic duo for sure.
And then just last thing that I wanted to bring up regarding the farm system, Marcelo Mayer earned the South Atlantic League Player of the Week after in 6 games hit 3 home runs, batted .516 with 12 RBIs and a 1.1516 OPS. Just unbelievable. It's really cool to seeing him continue to develop not only his on base ability, but also his power as well. And, excited to see him, continue to flourish down there in Greenville, and, curious to see when we could potentially see a promotion for him to Portland. Won't be surprised if it's more in the middle of the year, maybe June or July. They want to continue to give him experience in Greenville. We all know Chaim Bloom always talks about not rushing guys throughout the system. But as always, we're going to keep you posted about everything that's happening regarding not only the Boston Red Sox, but also some of the farm system as well. If you didn't check out yesterday's episode, we had the opportunity to speak with Rio Gomez and pick his brain a little bit about who he is on the field, but also off the field as well. But if you want to check out Locked On Red Sox 5 days a week, make sure to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also follow us over on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. Myself, it's at Jake Iggy. And also Lauren is La 3 Laws, Lauren with 4 R's. And for our everydayers, we want to thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. Now make sure to check out tomorrow's episode, because we're going to be recapping Game 2 against the Braves, and hopefully we see a better showing not only from the Red Sox, but also from a guy like Brayan Bello, who needs to make a big statement. But as always, we greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. I hope that everybody has a great rest of your day. We'll end this episode how we always end it. Keep the faith, stay positive, and let's go Sox. Peace.